collusion, no obstruction. He's a leaker.
Just 1 week after the blockbuster testimony of former FBI Director James Comey, the Attorney General set to go to the Hill on Tuesday.
The FBI director gave this information to a third party to leak. So I think that James Comey has serious legal exposure.
Do you have illusions of grandeur? You spend a lot of time talking about your emotions.
Makes me mildly nauseous. That gave me a queasy feel. That's why I was so uneasy. I was so stunned.
Were your feelings hurt, Jim? Man, are you dramatic.
He's that guy? Like, he's not strong enough to say something that he believes is right, that he goes and runs a memo, then he leaks it to the New York Times? I mean, I can't imagine anyone actually believing that that happened.
3 Army Rangers shot and killed in Afghanistan, the same area where the military dropped the so-called mother of all bombs.
When heroes fall, Americans grieve. Our armed forces are in the fight. They're taking the fight to terrorists on our terms, on their soil.
Anti-Sharia law marches being held in some 24 cities nationwide.
Are you here to protest against Islam?
It's not against Islam. It's against Sharia law.
Before this summer, job one, we will repeal and replace Obamacare.
Obamacare is dead. The only people who won't admit that are the Democrats, who are in the way of better health care.
Clayton's jump jiving over here.
I am. I think the coffee just hit in. Come on, baby. Come on in. Come on in.
Stay tuned.
Welcome. Welcome into Fox and Friends on this Sunday morning, everyone. Sandra Smith back with us this morning.
Good morning.
You look lovely in green, by the way.
By the way, thank you for having me back. I wasn't sure after yesterday.
Yesterday was a tryout.
Right. We kind of talked about it throughout the afternoon. Yeah. You kind of got in under the wire, I got to admit.
Hilarious.
Actually,
we had fun.
No one else.
We had to get a third. We had to get a break the vote with a third person. Clayton was for. I was against.
Right.
See how I'm treated around here?
You know what? Frankly, no one else was up and awake and available. So thank you so much. Thanks, pal.
Absolutely.
We love her.
Hey, we've got a jam-packed show we got to get to this morning.
We sure do.
So much going on. A big weekend of news, and then a big week coming up on Capitol Hill, by the way.
Well, that's exactly right. So last week, of course, you had James Comey testifying. Then you had President Trump fighting back in the Rose Garden. Now you have the White House continuing to fight back because they're saying Attorney General Jeff Sessions will testify on Tuesday of this upcoming week in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee. He was set to testify in front of the House and Senate Budget Committees, but he will be sending his deputy to those and instead going straight to the very same committee that Comey testified to set the record straight. Because there was a lot of accusations, not just at President Trump, but at the Attorney General as well from Comey.
Absolutely, because James Comey saying basically I didn't trust him.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that he was going to leave the room, you know, he gets out and leaves the room. Actually, let's listen to what he had to say this week about Sessions. Take a listen.
Are you saying that you also told him that he had made a request that you let it go with regard to part of the investigation of Michael Flynn?
No, I specifically did not. I did not. Our judgment, as I recall, was that he was very close to and inevitably going to recuse himself for a variety of reasons. We were convinced, and in fact, I think we'd already heard that the career people were recommending that he recuse himself, that he was not going to be in contact with Russia-related matters much longer. And that turned out to be the case.
Well, the response now from the Trump administration over the weekend, Saturday night, late last night, they're making some news down in Washington, and here's the letter from Jeff Sessions. In light of reports regarding Mr. Comey's recent testimony before the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, it is important that I have an opportunity to address these matters in the appropriate forum. So June 13th, he will testify.
Yeah, I think it's an important move. I mean, ultimately, Comey said of Sessions, one, he shouldn't have left the room. Remember, it was a private conversation between the FBI director, and that he didn't feel like he could tell the Attorney General Sessions what he thought because he thought Sessions was biased or was eventually going to recuse himself. So even if he did feel, remember, on May 3rd, in testimony, you had James Comey saying he never was asked to end an investigation for political reasons. Yet now he's changing his tune, saying, well, I felt pressured. At that moment, he said nothing to the Attorney General.
And then Donald Trump Jr. going on with Judge Jeanine on Justice last night to defend his father, going as far as calling James Comey a dishonest man of bad character. Watch this.
When I see what's going on right now, when I see what went on for 10 months with the Russia nonsense and the smear, and then we see what happens on Thursday, it's like, Give me a break. I mean, they're literally spent 10 months chasing a rabbit down a hole with essentially the sole purpose to try to take down my father. I think it's clear that, you know, everything that went on in the Comey testimony was basically ridiculous. I think he's proven himself to be a liar in all of this. I think he's proven himself to be a dishonest man of bad character.
So obviously not holding back there. His family.
This is the tactic. I mean, this is the tactic now from this side, which is smear James Comey. Say he's a bad guy, bad character, that he's weak, he's spineless, that he's the leaker, he's the guy that where all these leaks are coming from. I wonder if it's a good strategy for them.
It's the tactic because it's the tactic that's been waged against them by the deep state and by Comey and by the press and by the Democrats endlessly since the inauguration. So they're saying, listen, you've been trying to indict us. We're pointing out the fact that Comey's waffled all over the place, and he admitted to being the leaker, as you said, Clayton. I mean, this is a guy who said, I had a private conversation with the president, I wrote it down, I put it in my drawer, then I pulled it out and gave it to the New York Times to benefit myself.
But we've had intelligence guys here on the show who are friends with Comey. You know, former members of the FBI say, Comey's a great guy. I've worked with him for years. He's a stand-up guy. He's an honorable guy. And I don't know, obviously the Trump administration has had some difficulties with the intelligence community in the past. I don't know if this helps or hurts them. We're going to have some guests on the show a little bit later to dive into that question.
We've certainly heard both sides. And an op-ed caught our eye in the New York Post by Michael Goodwin. He put some of the dots, he sort of connected some of the dots and said, on the leaking, there's something in common on all of this. It's both the author of the articles in the New York Times and the leaker. Here's a quote from an op-ed written in the New York Times by Michael Goodwin. He said, if Comey didn't trust a duly elected president, the honorable thing would be to resign. But Comey was not honorable. Instead, he was a sneaky note-taker collecting grievances as insurance for himself. He colluded with the anti-Trump media, which recognized the FBI director as a kindred spirit. He cemented their brotherhood with leaks.
So what exactly is he talking about here? It's the same author in the New York Times reporting this story, and we heard from the James Comey testimony, of course, that he had given this diary entry basically to his friend. And here are these headlines that wound up in the New York Times from the same author of these articles. On March 5th, Comey asks Justice Department to reject Trump's wiretapping claim. That on May 11th, that other story, in a private dinner, Trump demanded loyalty. Comey demurred. One of my favorite words, but and then another one, Comey memo says Trump asked him to end Flynn investigation.
And as you pointed out, again, all the same author, Michael Schmidt. So,
right.
These leaks aren't rocket science, right? If you know somebody who can get information to a bylined author of the New York Times, that author, and maybe with others, put together a story with unnamed sources, and it makes the front page of the New York Times. And if you just start to pull back these articles and look at where they come from, they're all pro-Comey. They're all from the same author. They all involve anonymous leaks from high-level sources in the intelligence community or the Justice Department. I mean, it may turn out that James Comey, as much as people may want to think he's the honorable guy, he was actually king leaker all along, trying to take down a president that he thought was dishonest, that he didn't believe in. That's part of the argument that's being made.
So this is going to shape up to be an incredible week, really. You've already heard from his family defending him, and then Jeff Sessions, of course, we'll hear from him later this week. But then there's this, Shakespeare in the Park.
Oh, I love
Shakespeare. May I remind you,
Shakespeare in the Park.
Taxpayer-funded, depicting the assassination of President Trump. And obviously, if they're okay with this, will its corporate sponsors stand by this art ahead of its official opening on Monday night? Of course, all of this happening in the wake of the recent Kathy Griffin scandal.
Yeah, this is happening at the Public Theater. This is a Shakespeare in the Park, and this guy is portraying Donald Trump.
That's right. These are plays that go on in Central Park. This guy on the left they're not calling him President Trump, but every attribute from the hair to the long tie to the open jacket is meant to depict someone that looks exactly like President Trump. This is taxpayer funded, both city, state, and federal dollars for this play. What you see right there is our president being stabbed to death as part of an assassination plot in this play in Central Park that debuts tomorrow night. And so the question is, would this ever be acceptable of any other president, especially Barack Obama or anyone else? But with President Trump, 4 months, 5 months into his term, we're seeing him stabbed to death in Central Park as an acceptable part of art that we pay for?
And will corporate sponsors that are involved with this, will they be held accountable for depicting a violent death of our U.S. president?
That's right. Well, and, are they even aware half the time when they put their money money behind something like this. Now I'm sure that they are aware of this, that they might be starting to pull support. Bank of America, Delta, New York Times, among the corporate sponsors, American Express on that list. I mean, it's despicable. Haven't we learned anything from the Kathy Griffin issue over the past 2 weeks? This, regardless of what party you're in, even independent, you don't ever do something like this. This is the President of the United States. It's off limits.
Disagree with them all you want. I don't get it. You're exactly right, Clayton. Where's the self-awareness? Really? Right. Just basic. You can really despise this guy's policies and not like him. Maybe you resist. That's fine. It's your right as an American. But to depict the stabbing of a president, I don't think there's anyone out there that would say, wow, you know, I want to go see Shakespeare in what's it called?
Shakespeare in the Park.
In the Park.
So to remind everybody, Bank of America, Delta Airlines, by the way, great point, by the way, a lot of people do bring their families to these events. The New York Times, American Express, another one of the corporate sponsors there. So we asked the question, will they be held accountable? Will they take themselves out of it? What might you guess? Well,
and President Trump was slammed for cutting the budget of the NEA, the National Endowment for the Arts. That's the organization that funds stuff like this. When the public taxpayers, when they had a taxpayer budget, and they say, I'm paying for this, you can understand why people...
Let us know your thoughts. Friends at FoxNews.com. You can weigh in on that.
All right. Well, good morning again, everybody. Turning now to your headlines and a Fox News alert. 3 Army Rangers shot and killed in Afghanistan. 1 other Ranger was wounded. The gunman, an Afghan soldier. The Taliban claiming credit for Saturday's deadly attack. Vice President Mike Pence spoke about the tragic news.
When heroes fall, Americans grieve. We honor their service, their sacrifice, and we always will.
The attack happened in the same area where the U.S. dropped the mother of all bombs in April, wiping out an ISIS cave complex. Senator Bernie Sanders ripped into President Trump, telling a crowd at the People's Summit in Chicago the president disrespects them.
The current model and the current strategy of the Democratic Party is an absolute failure. Democratic Party needs fundamental change.
But that's not all. He didn't just go after Trump. Sanders also went after the Democratic Party.
We have a president who displays every day a massive disrespect for democracy, for tolerance, and for traditional American values.
Sanders says the Democratic Party needs to be a party for all 50 states, not just the East and West Coasts, which you, of course, hear from many Democrats these days. And television icon Adam West, TV's original Batman, has passed away.
As I surmised, an illegal projection buoy cleverly camouflaged.
Wow! Maybe the crooks left fingerprints on it.
Good thinking, Robin. Let's find out. To the battle. Fast!
West played the Caped Crusader for all 3 seasons of the late 1960s show. He continued to appear in TV programs and movies after the show ended. He died Friday after a brief battle with leukemia. Tributes now pouring in from the entertainment world this morning. Burt Ward, who played Robin alongside Adam West's Batman, says, "This is a terribly unexpected loss of my lifelong friend. I will forever miss him." And Ben Affleck, who played Batman in Batman vs. Superman, tweeted, "Adam West exemplified heroism. Kind, funny, and an all-around great guy. Thank you for showing us all how it's done." Adam West was 88 years old. And those are your headlines this morning. By the way, he was recently quoted saying he had a warehouse filled with memorabilia, and he wasn't going to sell any of it.
He loved playing Batman. Goodbye, old chum.
Rest in peace. Yep. All right, coming up, call it revenge of the losers. President Trump has faced an unprecedented amount of attacks, not just from Hillary Clinton, but also former President Barack Obama. So have past presidents ever been attacked like this? A historic look back next.
And this high schooler just wanted to make his yearbook great again, but the school had other ideas, editing out the Trump logo on his T-shirt.
What's different about those 2 pictures?
Didn't spot it.
When people in power invent their own facts and attack those who question them, it can mark the beginning of the end of a free society. That is not hyperbole. It is what authoritarian regimes throughout history have done.
Well, there she is, months after her election loss. Hillary Clinton still attacking President Trump.
But she's not alone. The old leader of the Democratic Party, former President Obama, has also attacked the president and his policies, saying this after the U.S. pulled out of the Paris Climate Accords. Quote, even in the absence of American leadership, even as this administration joins a small handful of nations that reject the future, I'm confident that our states, cities, and businesses will step up and do even more to lead the way.
There we go. So we ask, how rare is it to have past presidents and opponents attack a new president? For that, let's turn to presidential historian and author Doug Wead. Good morning, Doug.
Hey, Doug.
Thanks for joining us.
Pete,
So
Clayton,
how unprecedented are these attacks? Is this something we've seen before in history?
We have seen it before in history, but I'll say this, Pete, usually they're very gracious. You see that picture of George W. Bush hugging Michelle, the former First Lady. That's kind of a metaphor for what it's usually like. But I'll have to say there's this scene in Game of Thrones where in the last presidential debate, they asked Michael Beckloff, the presidential historian, to comment. He says 50 years from now, the only thing historians will remember is Donald Trump refusing to say he would accept the election results. Well.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton won, and today she's calling for resistance, her word. And Barack Obama's meeting with heads of state like Angela Merkel and calling for policy reversal. So, boy, how things change.
Doug, in modern American history, it doesn't seem like we've seen this. I mean, maybe before we had television, this was a common occurrence. I'm not sure. Take us back in history a little bit, but modern America, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, I don't remember seeing this.
No, there was one moment where Jimmy Carter called George W. Bush the worst president in history. He was trying to pass the baton on as quickly as he could, but we've never really had anything quite like this. And the reversal of policy, the Paris Accord, Barack Obama's a great politician, so he tends to accuse someone of what he himself is accused of. And it was very dictatorial the way the Paris Accord was reached. The Kyoto Protocol, they sent it to the Senate, who voted it down 95-0. This Obama wanted, and he worked with the national media, and they got their way without the people even knowing what it was about.
So, Doug, I'll ask you a very obvious question. Do these attacks on the president help or hurt him?
I think, Sandra, a very interesting question. In this case, I think it reflects more on Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton than it does on Donald Trump. It's very ungracious. Even as tough a politician as Richard Nixon, when he lost to John Kennedy, he was very gracious. Yeah. So was Al Gore in his loss to George W. Bush.
Sure, he was.
Two great historical examples, yeah.
Thanks, Doug Wead.
Thanks for bringing some perspective. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Good to see you.
Too.
All right, coming up, the mainstream media says those massive protests around the country yesterday, they were anti-Islam. But were they?
Are you out here protesting against Islam or against Sharia law?
Against Sharia law. I have nothing against Islam.
I hit the streets to hear from the protesters themselves. That's up next.
Gets right in there.
And welcome back. Some quick headlines for you. The son of former Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi is now a free man. 44-year-old Saif Gaddafi was released and offered amnesty by Libyan rebels. Gaddafi has been held on war crimes since the 2011 revolution that killed his father and 3 of his brothers. He's still wanted by the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity. And the Puerto Rican Day Parade is set to start at 11 a.m. this morning here in New York City, and there are still plans to honor the leader of a terror group during that parade. Oscar Rivera Lopez's terror group claimed responsibility for more than 100 bombings across the United States. The parade comes as Puerto Ricans head to the polls today, deciding whether they want their struggling U.S. territory to become the 51st U.S. state. They always vote no.
There you have it. All right, well, hundreds of people across the country protesting Sharia law yesterday, but the mainstream media made it all about Islam.
The clashes erupting into brawls here at home over Islam.
Protesters and counter-protesters squaring off across the country tonight, either against the threat of Islamic law or in defense of Muslim Americans.
Activists say anti-Sharia groups promote a distorted view of Islam.
So it was a protest against Sharia law, but it did become all about Islam. This is something, Pete, that you have dived right into.
Yeah, we knew predictably the mainstream media would characterize it as such. So there was one of these protests, these rallies here in New York City. So I hit the streets yesterday to talk to some folks that were there and asked them, why are you here? What are you doing exercising your First Amendment right? What's it all about? And this is what they had to say.
Today there's a protest going on to protest Sharia law, which is an extreme version of Islam.
I don't think that killing people or mistreating women is a religion.
So you're not out here, are you out here protesting against Islam or against Sharia law?
Against Sharia law. I have nothing against Islam.
I want to make sure that we're aware of everything that Sharia is, everything extremist Islam stands for, and we're aware of the dangers.
Are you here to protest against Islam?
It's not against Islam. It's against Sharia law.
Every radical Islam come from their law. I mean, do we have to stop that already? America had to be strong about this.
It's not about being against Muslims. It's just being against the ideology of, I guess, murdering homosexuals and treating women as a second-class, maybe under a second-class citizen, just dehumanizing.
Over in Britain, they were just frogs boiling in water, and now they're dead.
Critics will say that you're anti-Muslim. Are you anti-Muslim?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think what needs to happen really is a reformation of the religion from the inside, and I feel like that needs to start with Muslims. So we need Muslims. The fact is that none of these people would want to kick out Muslims from this country. That's not what we're about here. At least that's my understanding of America.
Yeah, and that's what I heard across the board. We talked to a bunch of folks down there. This was one of 28 protests across the country. Some did include clashes with counter-protesters. So the Antifa, the anti-fascist, wearing all black and masks were out there to confront. But I think what you find are groups of patriots who say, you look what happens in Europe, you look at the contentions they're having and terrorist attacks they've had. How do we make sure that American values are perpetuated here and that things like Sharia law, which is an extreme form of Islam, are not implemented subtly or directly? And that's ultimately what they said. And they pointed to the Constitution and said, hey, we've got a First Amendment right to stand up for the values that have always made America great. So it was always enjoyable to go out there and
Good
talk to
stuff.
folks.
And you got right in there and got the story for us. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, well, this video is insane. A semi-truck explodes into a fireball in the middle of a highway. Watch that. What caused this fiery wreck is straight ahead.
Plus, James Comey says Loretta Lynch ordered him to downplay the Clinton email investigation and call it a matter. What would happen if a Republican attorney general did that? Our panel here to weigh in just ahead.
Welcome to the second floor of Studio F. Another segment for you. Some shocking revelations from James Comey's testimony this week about the FBI's probe into Hillary Clinton and how it should be handled.
The Attorney General had directed me not to call it an investigation, but instead to call it a matter, which confused me and concerned me.
So, what if a Republican Attorney General ordered the FBI director to call an investigation a matter? Let's bring in our panel. Katie Pavlich is the editor of Town Hall and a Fox News contributor. Mustafa Tamiz is a Democratic strategist and a former consultant to the Department of Homeland Security under the Bush administration. And Ron Meyer is the editor of Red Alert Politics and a GOP strategist. Good morning to you all. Katie, I'll start with you. So obviously it was a Democratic Attorney General that asked the FBI director to do this. What would it look like if it had been a Republican that said, don't call it an investigation, call it a matter?
Well, the first thing is that the Attorney General would have been asked to recuse themselves from any investigation that they were overseeing, in this case the Clinton email scandal. And then every Republican from the president down, including the head of the RNC, would have been called on the carpet to condemn the comments. And there would certainly be accusations of corruption, obstruction of justice, as we've seen. But let's not forget that this was a habit of the Obama administration, especially in the Justice Department. And Eric Holder, who served before Loretta Lynch, was the first sitting cabinet member in history to be held in contempt of Congress.
That's right. Mustafa, you take all of that on top of the famed tarmac meeting. Is Loretta Lynch getting away with something that a Republican just never could? There's a lot of evidence there.
Well, it was concerning, and Comey honestly reported that back. But it was a matter of semantics. It didn't change anything. But what's really important now is that the President of the United States, sitting president, asked the FBI director not to follow through on an investigation. That, I think, is a much more significant problem. And as all Americans, we should be concerned about that.
So you're turning it toward Trump, but Ron Meyer, I mean, he says it's a matter of semantics. Yeah. Or is this, you've said, and others have, that this might not just be semantics, it's criminal.
That's right. Hope is not a directive, first of all, when it comes to Trump. And going back to if a Republican would have done this in the first place, here's the thing. It's not just they would have to recuse themselves. The Attorney General wouldn't just have to recuse himself. This is against the law. It's against two laws that I just found this morning in a cursory search. It's against the Hatch Act, and it's against the FEC regulations prohibiting government collusion with a campaign. There is no coordination allowed. In fact, coordination, message coordination, which is what happened here, saying that we're going to use campaign language, putting matter into the FBI's press conference, that is actually considered an in-kind donation. An in-kind donation from the FBI and the Attorney General to the Clinton campaign. That is obviously illegal. So if it would have been a Republican that did it on the other side, there would have been an investigation, there would have been charges pressed, and frankly, the FBI director and the Attorney General would have lost their job under the Hatch Act rules.
And Katie, I mean, not to mention the headlines that would have been endless, yet we've seen almost nothing in mainstream press about Loretta Lynch.
Yeah, funny how this little nugget about Loretta Lynch telling the FBI director to call the criminal investigation, after all, the FBI does criminal investigation, not looking into matters, a matter. And I want to just point out that the semantics matter here, because Hillary Clinton's campaign was calling this a, quote, security review. And as James Comey testified last week, he was concerned that the language the Justice Department was using at the directive of Loretta Lynch was far too close to the language being used by the Clinton campaign to kind of try and quell the concerns surrounding the criminal investigation into her mishandling of classified information. So the semantics actually really do matter here when it comes to the Justice Department looking like they were taking a side in the election.
Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. The timing of TV tells us we have to, but thank you very much, Ali Mustafa.
Thanks,
Ron, we'll get back to you as well. Katie, thank you very much.
Pete.
Appreciate it. All right, Sandra, over to you.
Thank you, Pete. Turning to your headlines this morning, 8 people are hurt after a car slammed into pedestrians outside of an Amsterdam train station. Police say the car was parked in an illegal spot near the central station. As the driver was approached by officers, he sped off, hitting pedestrians before crashing into a concrete wall. 2 of the injured are in serious condition, we are told. Police say this was not an act of terror. And a semi explodes into a ball of fire, black smoke billowing into the air. The tractor trailer struck a barrier and burst into flames north of Tampa, Florida. The driver, critically injured, was airlifted to a trauma center with burns covering 40% of his body. The highway is now open after crews were forced to repave the roadway. Friday's crash is currently under investigation. And this, outrage at a New Jersey high school after President Trump's campaign slogans are removed from students' clothing and yearbook photos. The Make America Great Again motto was completely erased, as you can see, from this T-shirt, while another student's Trump logo on his fleece vest was suddenly gone. Parents are firing back, demanding the yearbook be reprinted. School officials say they have never made any action against any political party.
Except for this one.
Except for that, until now, I guess. All right, well, a happy occasion indeed. The presidential family celebrating a baby boy. Well, at least the expected arrival of one. Over the weekend, Lara and Eric Trump threw a baby shower with friends and family for the first child expected in September. From balloons to cake, the New York party was full of baby boy-themed decorations. Even our very own Judge Jeanine joined in on the festivities, pictured here with the glowing mom-to-be. And congratulations to that family as they await their baby boy. And those are your headlines.
All right, let's get outside to Rick Reichmuth because I think it's going to be like 93 degrees here finally on the East Coast. Good morning, Rick.
Finally, as in you're excited? You're ready for it?
Yes, now it finally feels like summer because it's been like 50 degrees.
I know. Don't worry. It's going to be 50 degrees again by the time we get to the latter part of the week.
Thanks, Rick.
It's coming back. But we do have a little bit of summer coming right now and some big-time summer temperatures across the plains. Take a look at the map, show you what's going on. It's already hot. 74 in Minneapolis, 73 in Chicago. Today you're going to be up in the heat is on. Down across parts of Florida, we have a lot of moisture there. Get ready again for some afternoon storms. You know, we had big flooding this week, which is good because we've had so many fires going on. Still a few fires to be put out, so we'll really take any rain we have. Also, some major storms going on this morning across parts of South Dakota, headed in towards Minnesota. That is certainly going to wake you up there, and that will kind of strengthen again later on in the day into some more severe weather around parts of Wisconsin. Here's your temperatures today. You get the idea. It is really hot. 92 and humid in Chicago, 91 in Kansas City. Tomorrow the heat moves to the east. We're at 94 in New York, 95 in Boston. You get the idea. 96 for Tuesday. So the heat is on finally. It does go away pretty quickly, though, unfortunately, Clayton. Sorry.
All right,
Spring
so
will be
enjoy
back.
it while it lasts. You hear that, Clayton?
I will. Maximize it.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Clayton
Greg.
will.
Yeah, always picnic blanket. Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick. All right, coming up, the White House leaks, they keep piling up, and they all have something in common. Dan Bongino says this is the biggest political scandal in modern times, a big charge. He joins us live at the top of the hour.
And the numbers don't lie. The economy is actually booming under President Trump. Our next guest has the proof the mainstream media won't share with you. You're not going to read this on the front pages.
Good morning. Glad you're with us. We're back with some quick headlines. We have a winner. One lucky Powerball ticket worth $448 million matched all 6 numbers. That ticket sold in Sun City, California, right outside of Los Angeles. If you missed them, the winning numbers were 20, 26, 32, 38, and 28. And Powerball was 3. The grand prize soared to its highest in months after 19 straight drawings that began in April. And check your pantry. More than 700,000 pounds of spaghetti and meatball products are being recalled. Breadcrumbs in the products may contain milk, which is not marked on labels. For a list of products, go to the government's Food Safety and Inspection Service website. Important information. All right, Clayton, to you.
All right, thanks, Sandra. Well, the numbers don't lie. The economy is getting a big boost right now under the Trump administration, but not according to the mainstream media. Here are a couple of headlines. The New York Times saying weak spots remain. The Washington Examiner citing a roller coaster economy. And Bloomberg going so far as calling the president's economic agenda almost dead. But how is the economy really doing? Here to break it down, economics professor at the University of Maryland, our old friend Peter Marisi. Nice to see you this morning, Peter.
Nice to be with you.
Let's take a look at the Dow Jones and the stock market since Election Day. Break this down for us. Dow Jones up 16%?
Well, absolutely, and the other indices are up as well. Overall, the market's up about 15%, broadly speaking. The rollback of regulation is very important. Look at the energy sector and how much drilling is up, even though the price of oil remains at $50 a barrel. It's now more profitable to do things in America simply because the regulators are at least taking lunch now.
So regulations down, companies can feel unburdened, unshackled, and you blame Donald Trump for removing these regulations.
I don't blame him. I credit him because he's putting in place cabinet secretaries that are easing back. I mean, there are limits to what they can do without legislation, but they're doing what they can. And remember how aggressive Mr. Obama was without legislation.
Absolutely. Robust hiring. That's another area where we're seeing 594,000 jobs created since the president took office.
The Obama administration put all kinds of roadblocks in place to hiring by encouraging the cities to go to $15 an hour on the minimum wage, and with Obamacare costs going up and up and up and so forth. But now we have hiring increasing again. People are adopting productivity, labor using devices and so forth to enhance productivity. Manufacturing's hiring, construction's hiring. So this is good news.
We have the unemployment rate, which also fell to 4.3% in May. That's the lowest level since 2011. We had Andy Puzder on the show yesterday. He was up for labor secretary. He withdrew his nomination back in February. And one of the things he said was, look, we've got a problem where we don't have the skilled labor. So these companies want to hire. They're having trouble even finding people that have the skills. What can the Trump administration do about that?
Well, the Trump administration is going to announce on Wednesday a big build-out of apprenticeship programs, something the Obama people were very big on as well. Right. I'm going to be very interesting to see if Chuck Schumer, poo-poos that as well. I mean, this should be a motherhood issue. The real question here is, are the Democrats going to get in line on common sense reforms and programs that will help make the environment better for hiring and for workers to get jobs?
So you do point to President Trump being credited with this big boost that we're seeing right now.
Well, I think that he has to be credited because businesses are expecting a more hospital environment. They're expecting an environment where regulators will be more reasonable. So I think that's good.
Yeah. Finally, you know, when you have Bloomberg saying his economic agenda is dead, do you think we're going to see the tax reform the companies are waiting for?
Well, that's really up to the House and the Senate. They have to compromise on some issues like border tax adjustments, how much revenue they're willing to give up, the window for the tax cut and so forth. There's a lot of possibilities for getting a tax cut in place, but more importantly, rationalizing the tax system so there's less disincentives to invest.
Yeah, great. Well said, as always. Peter, great to see you this morning. Peter Morici, thanks so much.
Take care.
All right, coming up here on the show, leaks keep dripping from the White House, and they've all got something and someone in common. Dan Bongino says this is the biggest political scandal in modern times. He's going to join us live. Plus, we've all done it as kids, but is it safe to drink from the garden hose during the summer? Dr. Nicole Saphier is here to separate fact from fiction. It's summertime. Drink from a water hose.
Good morning.
Don't drink the pool water, Peter.